You have heard the quote before. I have not yet begun to fight. But where does it come from? It comes from John Paul Jones, and no, not the drummer from Led Zeppelin, but one of the greatest heroes of the Revolutionary War. As a huge fan of military battles and military strategies, I have a lot of respect and appreciation for Captain Jones. I find his story very interesting. Had it not have been for this great American, the British Royal Navy, the world's most powerful at the time, could have very well defeated the Continental Navy, changing the face of the entire Revolution and the free world as we know it. From his birth in Scotland to his time serving as a merchant sailor and his migration to America, he has led a very interesting life. He was born John Paul on July 6, 1747 in Kirkcudbright, Scotland, and when he was only 13, sailed out of Whitehaven as an apprentice, effectively starting his sailing career. He continued to advance that career aboard merchant and slave ships until 1768, when he abandoned his prestigious post as first mate of the Two Friends, due to his growing disgust with the slave trade. Paul's career quickly advanced, however, while sailing aboard the brig, as the captain and one of the high-ranking mates suddenly died of yellow fever, and John Paul took control of the helm, getting it back to safely to port. The owners were so impressed they made him captain. However, under his command, one man had died of yellow fever, yet he was still implicated in having involvement in his death. He was arrested in his home county, and when he was out on bail, he actually fled to England. There, he commanded the Betsy for about 18 months before killing Blackton, a mutinous crew member, by sword in self-defense. Out of fear that he would be found guilty of murder, he fled yet again to America and changed his name by adding Jones to it. He then took over his recently deceased brother's property in Virginia. As a natural-born Scot, he fully knew the oppression of the British Empire, so when the Continental Navy formed in 1775, he was very eager to join. He was appointed as a first lieutenant aboard the Alfred, a newly converted 24-gun frigate, on December 17th of that same year, and on her maiden voyage, Lieutenant Jones became the first person to be able to hoist the Grand Union flag, our nation's first national ensign, on a naval vessel. After this voyage, Jones had proven his worth to command his own ship and was given the USS Providence, becoming the first sailor in American history to be promoted to captain. He was later sent back to the Alfred as its commander, then the USS Ranger on June 14th in 1777, which was the first day the Stars and Stripes flag was adopted. Most of Jones' battles against the British took place aboard this ship, to include one of only 3 naval battles that took place off the coast of Britain. So the Ranger led an attack on the HMS Drake, which was successfully captured, and on that same voyage also led an assault on Whitehaven, greatly reducing English morale. On February 6 of 1778, the Ranger, even under Jones's command, became the very first United States ship to ever be saluted by a French officer. Jones then wrote about it, saying, "I accepted his offer all the more, for after all, it was in recognition of our independence." Although his accomplishments leading up to this point were great, his short time aboard the helm of the USS Bonhomme Richard is what sealed his status as an American legend. He took command of the 42-gun frigate, outfitted by the French, from an old East Indiaman in 1779, and in September he immortalized his name in the Battle of Flamborough Head. The battle started with Jones firing upon Captain Richard Peterson in the Serapis, but this caused more damage to the Bonhomme Richard than it did to the Serapis because 2 of his cannons blew up. And over the next hour, the vastly superior English ship continued to pepper the hull of the Bonhomme. Eventually, the USS Bonhomme Richard had only 3 working cannons, and the Stars and Stripes was completely destroyed. And at that point, Pearson yelled over to Jones, asking if he had surrendered. That's when Jones unwaveringly yelled back his famous words, "Surrender? I have not yet begun to fight!" And the battle raged on. As time went by, the Bonhomme sustained more significant damage, and the battle seemed to be unwinnable for John Paul Jones and his crew. But at this point, the Serapis Jim Boob got caught within the Bonhomme Richard's rigging, and then John Paul Jones led the crew to attach the 2 ships, then sent William Hamilton to climb above the deck of the Serapis using the attached riggings, and dropped grenades into an open hatch where the munitions were kept. On the third grenade, he exploded the British gunpowder stock, killing and maiming most of the crew remaining on the Serapis, and damaging the rest of the cannons in the hull. Upon seeing this, Pearson immediately surrendered, and the 3-hour battle had come to an end, with Jones sailing away with the Serapis. He continued his loyal service to the Navy throughout the end of the war, when it was disbanded. He then continued sailing in other countries, always intending to return back home to America. However, on his way he fell ill in Paris and died on July 18, 1792. Originally being buried there, his body was later exhumed, memorialized, and reburied here in America in Annapolis on January 26, 1913. The president at the time, Theodore Roosevelt, presided over his ceremony, and his body may lay now forever entombed in America's Naval Academy, but he will live on forever with those 7 words.